I think cinema as a medium is particularly good at describing those sort of psychological horrific moments, in how you can play with perspective, POV, how you can jump in and out of looking and being looked at, how you can play with an audience's ability to not quite see what is in the frame. You know, that's tremendously potent in cinematographic terms, is like how you direct an audience's eye. An area that I really love is psychological horror. I'm not a great gore man, but I like horror films that have that kind of edge, and I've worked on films like We Need to Talk About Kevin and recently Greta, Neil Jordan film, that have that sort of sensibility. One of my favourite films is Robert Wise's The Haunting, that is so expert at describing those moments with not a single, you know, scary face in shot. It's all to do with the atmosphere that's set up, with the way the camera moves, with the way what the camera does not see. Tom and I in Nocturnal Animals had a great fun devising what those cues would be, photographically speaking, whether the camera had a celestial perspective and would look down on Susan, Amy Adams' character, reading, or pulling right back so that you're witnessing, but as though she was being observed by someone else, whether it's a slow creeping move or you see a partial part of her. It feels like there's another presence in her house. With Kevin, We Need to Talk About Kevin, there was a desire to create something much more in the head, and that started off in a more observational way and conventional way, and then gradually kind of slid under the epidermis and into the head. That was fun to play with. We used a number of techniques to do that, whether it was working with Canon 5D, and I just loved playing with that. I'd never had a camera before that could photograph in such low light. That was a revelation to me, like to be able to shoot in the street in available light, to be able to shoot with like a simple red light bulb and expose it, which we did quite a lot of sequences in that are flashbacks. Nocturnal Animals is one of my favourite films that I've ever worked on. I had a really interesting time with Tom in the prep for that film. He really wanted to think into the film before images came into play. He said, look, images are too totemic and powerful in themselves, so let's not bring to the table pictures right now. Let's talk about the script and talk about the philosophy. And that was great to distill our thinking about the film into a more kind of manageable area that then we could bring more appropriate imagery towards, of what we were looking for at that point, and what the colour would be, and what Amy Adams reading the manuscript in the real part of the movie versus the imagined movie in her head that she's coming up with. That was a really fascinating area to devise a look for, that she was kind of imagining this picture in her head like a director or a cinematographer. I joked about that with Amy. I was like, you know, you're the director of these sections of the film. And then the flashback sequences too had another distinct look. So all those things were great to talk about with somebody as visually adroit as Tom Ford. Obviously you're working with somebody who's world famous for the images he creates in fashion. And here he is turning his eye to a whole other medium, and I think doing it so brilliantly. That arresting opening sequence was a surprise to me when I saw the film. It's the only video in the film. We shot the film on celluloid on film, but those were shot on an Alexa, and they were originally intended to be in the art gallery. You know, we shot the art gallery with green screen screens, like TV size screens, and they were all going to be images on the screen, so they were never intended to be full screen, like 1239 widescreen images. In fact, they were actually shot vertically because they were vertical screens. So when I see the film, that opening is kind of disturbing to me photographically because the composition's all off. But it gets people looking because of the subject matter.